Hello and welcome to Between the Rows. I'm Ed White, your host this week. Crop prices continue to stun, shock, and delight growers. Later in the show, we'll talk to Phil Franz Workington about that.
Yeah, it's the same story as tight supplies, and there's just a general strength in world vegetable oil markets. And the dryness in the prairies is compounding that and giving some firmness as well. So I guess if farmers are out there seeding and they haven't priced anything yet, there's some good opportunities out there.
We'll talk about the mood and the focus in the U.S. Biden administration as the United States Department of Agriculture pivots to a much different political and policy orientation.
Kind of a different tone for sure, something that we wouldn't have heard of before, and as you mentioned, climate change as well. That's something that we didn't, I think it was almost verboten that the word climate change or the term climate change even be used in the Trump years. So and of course that's a big part of the policy going forward with Biden.
And we'll take a look at how and if the pandemic and a lot of bad press about beef has affected Canadians' feelings towards the burger meat.
We believe that Canadians are very much committed to beef still. 92% of Canadians actually still eat beef, and 65% of them actually eat beef regularly. And so those numbers should be comforting for the beef industry in general.
But first, a word from our sponsor.
Get a jump on the season without interest slowing you down. Join FBN now through August 10th and apply for 0% financing on purchases made during your first 30 days and pay no interest until 2022. To learn more about how you can sign up and lock in your 0% rate, go to fbn.com. Financing provided by Farm Credit Canada. By applying for credit through FCC, you consent to FBN providing your information to FCC or its designated third-party service providers. Not all applicants will qualify. Only available to new transacting FBN members in Canada, excluding Quebec.
Beef plants got shut down in the pandemic. People have blamed beef for climate change. It's been a rough patch for the mainstay meat. But how has that affected Canadians' views of beef? Dalhousie University has just released a survey on that topic. Cattleman magazine editor Lisa Gunther had a chance to talk to Dalhousie's Sylvain Charlebois about this survey, and this is their conversation.
So beef has been under fire in the news. The latest being Epicurus's announcement that they're going to be ditching beef recipes. But from what you've seen, have there been any changes in Canadians' beef consumption in the last year or so?
We thought perhaps that the pandemic would have had an impact on animal protein demand, but we don't think it has. It has at all. In fact, we believe that Canadians are very much committed to beef still. 92% of Canadians actually still eat beef, and 65% of them actually eat beef regularly. And so those numbers should be comforting for the beef industry in general. But there are clouds on the horizon, and I think that the younger generations are really looking at beef a little bit differently, and they are considering holistic factors like the environment, animal welfare, for example. Health has always been there, but you can see that really in the environment and animal welfare are becoming critical factors. The other one, this is probably our third survey in 5 or 6 years as a lab on beef consumption. The one factor that is creeping up more and more is price. That one wasn't necessarily because people went to the meat counter and people appreciated meat counter economics. Beef is a premium product. They're supposed to be paying. But now I think what's going on is that both chicken and pork are also very expensive, especially pork over the last 6 months. And so we think there may be some sort of a hollow effect coming from the other two components of the meat trifecta, impacting how people see beef prices right now. So I think that's probably why people are becoming a little bit more price sensitive at the meat counter.
So you mentioned some of the drivers are things like animal welfare, environment, price. Is there a variation between age groups or other demographics and how concerned people are about those drivers for potentially cutting beef from their diets?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the younger generations are much more influenced uh, by by the environment, and frankly, it's not surprising because you see, I mean, we run surveys all the time, and millennials and the Generation Z, so everyone under the age of 40 right now, they've been raised differently, they've been educated differently. Sustainability is very much part of what they've learned in school, at the university. Certainly our curriculum has changed, so they're leaving university. The last 15, 20 years, Canadians have actually left university or school thinking differently about the environment. And so for the farming community, it may seem a little bit bizarre because, I mean, the best environmental stewards in the world are farmers. So naturally, sustainability is not even a word used in farming because that's what farmers do. They take care of the environment. But urbanites haven't been always on board with this. They're starting to understand that they need to behave differently. They need to make decisions differently in order to better serve the environment, in order to become better environmental stewards. And so that is probably creating some sort of a disconnect between how farming communities perceive environmental stewardship versus city dwellers, for example. And that disconnect will probably last for a while. Yeah.
So I think some of these issues have been ongoing concerns from consumers for a while. Are they more urgent now, though, or is it and do they need a different approach from the beef industry, or is it more a matter of sort of staying the course on the current approach, or what are your thoughts?
Well, I've seen some publicities or marketing messages coming from the cattle or beef industry in recent years, and I think they're getting better at it. And of course, the Cane Roundtable for Sustainable Beef is a very important initiative. But I've always said to the cattle industry, it started 10 years too late, because really things were starting to shift as they were getting together to launch the roundtable in 2016. It should have been launched before 2010 at the very least. And I've been clear on that because to change attitudes is very tough. And so a lot of people, there was the Earls incident a few years ago, and clearly you could see that people weren't necessarily seeing beef the same way. Now out west, beef is seen very, in our stats. Of course, the commitment towards beef is significant out west. But the market is shifting in three parts of our country, and that would include Quebec, Ontario, and BC. They are looking at beef very differently, and so you want to massage that message as much as possible, because they'll see beef as being bad, or even some people actually believe that beef production should be outlawed, and without really appreciating the sector's contribution to the environment. They only see the negatives, unfortunately, and that noise is now quite overwhelming.
On the perhaps as a silver lining, before we at the beginning of this interview or this chat, you mentioned that the rise of plant proteins has kind of pushed the beef industry to more aggressively defend itself, I guess. Could you talk a little bit about that? Or
Well, so yeah, when you provoke, it's less noticeable than when you actually counterattack. That's kind of what has happened during the protein wars, as I call them. At first, of course, you saw companies manufacturing vegetable protein-based products, and the way they positioned those products was to invite consumers to replace beef with these new products. And I was always uncomfortable with that approach, because you can't replace beef. You just can't. It's a unique natural product. What you can do, though, is provide options and choice for consumers. And I think that's what they wanted to do, but it wasn't really articulated in a way which would allow the food industry, to not think about stomach share, to not think about, this value sum, this zero sum game we're often in food, saying that, well, if I get a piece of that stomach, then you won't, and it doesn't work that way anymore, I don't think. But they draw first blood, and of course the beef industry reacted to it, reacted to NW, reacted to all the campaigns we've seen in recent years. And I absolutely appreciate why they reacted in that way. I remember in Red Deer, I was talking to about 700 cattle producers and talked about A&W, and you can feel, you felt the hatred in the room. People just didn't appreciate what the company was doing, but A&W was basically trying to run a business. I mean, they were basically trying to provide something that they thought the market wanted. And based on the success of the campaign, they were right. But at the same time, they also learned that there's a very, very important space in the market for beef as well. And that's why they went grass-fed. So showing Canadians that they also are committed to beef animal proteins as well. So this coexistence to me is a delicate one, but a very important one for consumers and for the beef industry.
Great. Well, thank you very much for joining me today.
Well, my pleasure.
That was Lisa Gunther of Cattlemen speaking with Sylvain Charlebois of Dalhousie University. This is Between the Rows. Donald Trump going out and Joe Biden coming in has made for a major cultural change in both the White House and at the United States Department of Agriculture. How is it different? And now I welcome to the show Alan Dawson of the Manitoba Co-operator. Hello, Alan.
Oh, hi there.
So, Alan, both you and I were virtually in Washington, D.C. recently for a week. Can you I guess describe a bit about what the North American Agricultural Journalists Conference was all about and what it was like this year?
Well, it was different for a lot of reasons. One being what you just referred to, being virtual, and that had some advantages in some ways. Very convenient to be able to take part in the meeting and listen to the speakers and present questions and that sort of thing. So it was good that way. But also missing the interaction with the speakers as well as other NAAJ journalists and missing that quite a bit. But it was, and I think something you and I have discussed as well, a little different because a different administration. We've had 4 years of the Trump administration, and now we have the Biden administration. So there's been some changes there that I think people are watching, and of course that affected the lineup of speakers a little bit. Getting some speakers from, including Tom Vilsack, who's Secretary of Agriculture, with Biden, and so that brought a different tone, I think, to the meeting.
And one thing I noticed was, like you say, after the years that we had seeing Trump administration people, which then followed the years of Obama administration people, was that between the Trump administration team and the Biden administration people, there seemed a real difference in both tone and subject matter. What did you notice in terms of I guess that difference between the two crews who came in to talk to us?
Well, I think for one thing, if I'm correct, Sonny Perdue, which was the ag minister under Trump, I don't believe spoke at any NAAJ meetings. And Tom Vilsack, who had been with Obama, I think, for both terms, and is now back under Biden, which is kind of interesting in itself, was participating in the NAAJ meeting, as he has done in previous times. In fact, I recall one year, and I think you were there as well, in Washington, where Vilsack addressed the group calling in from Taiwan or somewhere overseas because he was on a mission. So it was interesting to have somebody as senior as Tom Vilsack addressing the meeting again. And it's interesting, too, that they've brought back somebody that's got a lot of experience, having been in the Obama administration for both terms. But you kind of wonder about it, that new president and bringing in your own people and that sort of thing. It was interesting to see Vilsack brought back. I'd be curious to get your take on that in terms of, I guess there's the pros and cons to, going with experience, but then also not bringing a fresher face to the USDA.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting because obviously Vilsack has deep experience, and you wonder what's behind that. Is there something major that President Biden wants to do, or is it just simply that he wants to not have to worry about the agriculture department, that he wants to put it in very capable hands because he's got other priorities he's thinking about? And I would be, if I was just going to guess, which I am going to do because I don't know anything beyond this, but I would guess he wants it in capable hands because he's got these other issues that I really noticed during the conference. I mean, there were things that were really quite a focus for the Biden administration people that you wouldn't even hear from the Trump folks, like the idea of racial justice and equity, especially with black farmers, and historically the discrimination and sometimes dispossession they've faced over U.S. history. Well, I mean, I never heard anything talked about that during the Trump years, but for everybody with the new administration, that seems to be quite a concern. And I also noticed it didn't matter what was being talked about, climate change comes into it now, whereas that was certainly again not something that was dominating the discussion in those years where it was Trump officials talking to us.
Yeah, that stood out for me as well. In terms of that rescue plan that Biden came out with, as part of that, there's a plan to forgive some government loans to minority farmers, which includes blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans, I think Native Hawaiians as well, and it might be another group there I'm missing. And it's kind of a different tone for sure, something that we wouldn't have heard of before. And as you mentioned, climate change as well. That's something that we didn't, I think it was almost verboten that the word climate change or the term climate change even be used in the Trump years. So and of course that's a big part of the policy going forward with Biden and Vilsack is climate change, and then the role of agriculture is going to play in it.
And I noticed this year too that they're unlike the Trump years where it was either Trump's threats to rip up NAFTA or going toe to toe with China, having a bit of a tariff trade war there, and then with various discussions with Europe over trade. Things were trade often, maybe not in a kind of coherent overall American policy, didn't dominate, but these kind of specific situations like NAFTA or China or whatever were often big subjects at the time. This year I noticed very little trade talk. It was very quiet on the trade front. Was that your perception too?
Yeah, indeed, and I think I got a question in there somewhere about the WTO and so on, and it seems maybe, in theory at least, the new administration is more amenable to trying to get trade relations set up again. And under Trump, it was very clear it was America first, and the United States was seem to be going out of its way to undermine bilateral or multilateralism and so on. And while I think it's widely agreed that the Biden administration and Democrats tend to be protectionist as well, and probably more protectionist historically than Republicans. I think there's still a recognition under the Biden administration that some of these international efforts around trade and multilateralism are important, not just for trade itself, but when it comes to creating allies and goodwill and in other sectors. So trade's a bridge to working out relations with other countries when it comes to other issues, I suppose, around things like trade sanctions or how you deal with countries like Russia or China that are tend to be hostile towards the United States.
And NAJ, North American Agricultural Journalists, it's a mixture of American journalists who write about agriculture from wire services and big mainstream daily newspapers to agriculture-specific publications. And in Canada, it's the same thing. We have members of NAJ in Canada who are from mainstream publications and from specific agricultural publications. It's anyone that covers agriculture professionally as a journalist. The organization doesn't allow as full members people that are in communications or public relations, those things. It's got to be street journalists. I understand there's a new incoming vice president for the organization from Canada. Can you tell us a bit about him, Alan?
Yeah, that'll be me. So I know you kind of had a hand in recruiting me to take on that position, and I had over the years served as a Canadian representative. I think they call that a vice president too, but they have a number of regional VPs, one for Canada, and I've filled in that role. And truth be told, it's I think you've done it before too. It's not too onerous. You just kind of show up. Although I know that I think the organization's been trying to encourage the regional VPs to be more active and being involved in certain committees, that sort of thing going forward. So yeah, now I guess I'm the VP, not just the Canadian representative anymore, but I felt it was kind of time. I've been a member a long time, and I probably should have been stepping up to help out a bit more. So you twisted my arm, and I said yes.
Well, congratulations on that. You'll be awesome, and thank you very much, Alan, for coming on the program today to discuss this with us.
Well, thanks a lot, Ed. It was good chatting with you.
Alan Dawson is a reporter with the Manitoba Co-operator, and this is Between the Rows. And now for an update on the markets, I'm joined by Phil Franz Workington of Markets Farm. Hello, Phil, and welcome to the show.
Hi, Ed. Thanks for having me.
So, a lot of farmers right now are very busy getting in the crop and dealing with everything that's needed in the field. If they haven't been noticing in the last few days, what's going on in the markets?
It's been a wild ride the last few days. Well, it's been kind of the same story for months now, where the price is rising higher and higher. The old crop months have hit a bit of a wall the past couple of days. There's been some serious profit taking after July canola hit $1,000 and is backed away to about $70 off that high as we're talking on Tuesday. New crop months are a bit of a correction as well, but they're back in the green as well. It's the same story as tight supplies, and there's just a general strength in world vegetable oil markets. and the dryness in the prairies is compounding that and giving some firmness as well. So I guess if farmers are out there seeding and they haven't priced anything yet, there's some good opportunities out there.
I imagine a lot of people would be worried now. It's so dry across the prairies, and canola is a small seeded crop, and being seeded into the top inch of soil. Is there any lack of pricing of new crop that you can assess from the markets, or have people found ways to get themselves some exposure to November onwards prices?
Yeah, there's definitely the don't price everything just yet, because there's we'll definitely need some timely rains to get a crop in the ground, or to grow a crop and get some decent yields. So and that's why prices are showing the strength they are, in order to the end users want to secure coverage. So it's that constant battle of getting the price right to encourage people to sell, especially something that they don't even have in their hands yet. So it's it's early spring, a long growing season ahead, so we'll see what happens. No one's lost a crop at this early stage yet, but we'll need some rain, and it's looking like the highs have to come in eventually, but for now the general strength of the market remains, as especially with those dryness concerns.
And are you able to take apart, from the canola price, how much of it is the soybean oil prices? How much is overall commodity market strength, from everything from lumber to copper to canola? And how much is prairie-specific drought concerns?
Yeah, that's there's definitely a bit of all of those factors coming together in sort of the perfect storm, I suppose. And I wouldn't be able to say which is more important than the other, but it's a little bit of everything has all come together to give it that boost. The only one thing, like looking at the charts and whatever, the only bearish thing really is the Canadian dollar is shown a fair bit of strength the past month or so, but even there, the last time canola prices were even anywhere close to this, Canadian dollar was at par. So it's is the currency having an influence or not? I'm not sure, but it's a perfect storm of different things all contributing to the latest strength.
And I suppose we'll find out a little bit about the influence of the dry prairie conditions if right after everybody gets their crops safely into the ground, we get a nice, slow, sort of 3-day, 3-inch soaker, and the crop ends up with pretty good conditions. That might reveal a bit on the charts.
Yeah, definitely. A good rain would do a lot to take some money out of this market. But at the end of the day, even then, that doesn't change the fact that supplies are tight, and there's like old crop supplies, and even with a decent crop this year, if with average yield expectations, which Ag Canada is using for now, even then, we're looking at another tight year next year, and it's going to take more than this year for it to come online. But there's been a number of new crushing plants coming on board within the next few years, so demand not going away on that side. So this could turn supportive factors in the market.
Yeah, certainly going to be people.
That's it. Prices. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, certainly there's going to be people that want to buy the crop in the future.
Yeah, bigger picture, canola will the strength, the factors that'll keep it strong will remain, but canola will always trade relative to outside markets like soybeans and Malaysian palm oil. So canola might stay strong relative to them, but if there's something that sees those markets drift lower, the canola strength will be relative to those other markets, and might not see the same unprecedented high levels we're at now.
And is much going on with wheat? That's a more drought-tolerant crop and a much more widespread and wide-grown around all of planet Earth. That I take it is a little less dramatic and exciting still.
Yeah, that's the thing with wheat, because it's grown everywhere. So we get, there's dryness here in the prairies and the northern states. So that's given a bit of a bid to the spring wheat markets lately. But the winter wheat areas in the U.S. have seen some better moisture and condition ratings showing some improvements. So, it's kind of up and down, and the bigger picture that the weather concerns aren't as serious for wheat, but there are enough areas that wheat's been fairly well supported as well, but not to the same extent as canola or soybeans or corn.
Well, thanks very much for this update, Phil.
Well, thanks for having me.
That was Phil Franz Workington of Markets Farm, and this is Between the Rows. That's all for this week. Please join us again next week for another episode of Between the Rows. I'm Ed White, and I wish you all the rain you need, all the heat your crops desire, and all the best on the farming fields of Canada.
Get a jump on the season without interest slowing you down. Join FBN now through August 10th and apply for 0% financing on purchases made during your first 30 days and pay no interest until 2022. To learn more about how you can sign up and lock in your 0% rate, go to fbn.com. Financing provided by Farm Credit Canada. By applying for credit through FCC, you consent to FBN providing your information to FCC or its designated third-party service providers. Not all applicants will qualify. Only available to new transacting FBN members in Canada, excluding Quebec.